Duh. Subscribe to the channel. Duh. And someone claimed that he was not all right in his male part. However, nothing like that. All this did not correspond to the truth. But the fact that he did not like to advertise his victories, which were many, because this is his personal life. Ilya Vladimirovich carefully watched over himself, did sports, one of his favorite views is the top running. And he also liked to swim along the river on the canoe, walk in the mountains, ride skis. In general, Ilya Ponomarev preferred active rest and never understood the lovers of celebrating lying on the TV couch. In addition to sports, the man loved fishing. And not just loved, but since childhood was her fan. You could be a brave person and think about nail polish. Alexander Sergeyevich was right. Although Ilya considered nail beauty part of his profession and went to manicure. He loved to repeat. The patient should immediately trust the doctor, in whose hands his life is. And if the hands look unkempt, what trust is there? By the way, the manicure, red hair, spectacular beauty Irina, with impatience, was waiting for a meeting with a wealthy, handsome man. And the matter is not only in generous tea, but from the bottom. Irina had completely different views on him. However, Ilya persistently pretended that he did not understand anything. Perhaps the one for which he will sacrifice his precious freedom and has not yet been born? Leaving his dark blue Lexus at the supermarket, Ilya went shopping and suddenly noticed a young girl with a child. The boy looked 7 years old, plus or minus a year. The girl is very young, said Ponomarev. How old is she now? Although what the hell is the difference? They are completely frozen. The girl and the baby were sitting on a bench, shivering from the cold, piercing wind. And it was the beginning of April. Ilya suddenly took over the feeling of pity for the girl and the baby. It is absolutely obvious that she has problems that she cannot solve herself. So maybe it's worth making their fate easier. The boy almost cries, helpless. Everyone who knew Ilya Ponomarev well would say. He's a very good person. And it was the only truth. There was no cynicism in him, which is inherent in many doctors. But the main thing is that Ilya will never walk past a person who needs help. Girl, do you have any difficulties? Ilya asked with sympathy. Maybe I can help you with something. Don't be shy. In response, the stranger sighed hard and shook her head. Poor but proud. Okay, let's go from the other side. Mr. Maroof began to think hard, and then he became blue. I somehow thought about taking a maid's room. Well, why not? Men are lazy, I work a lot, and sometimes I don't have the strength to clean up. And money? Enough. And I'll help the girl and the boy. Girl, I want to offer you something, he said. By the way, my name is Ilya Vladimirovich, and you? My name is Natalia. That's what she said, and this is Daniel. So, Natalia, I want to offer you to work as a maid. I just need to get a haircut. I thought, maybe you would agree? Natalia was clearly hesitant, and Ilya, noticing this, said, You're afraid of something? Don't be afraid. I'm not the hero of the blue beard fairy tale. I really need help now. I won't be offended by money. Natalia was far from accepting an attractive stranger in an expensive car for a maniac. Yes, but there are souvenirs in the world, and those who hand over their children to the authorities. And what? Easy? Natasha is dressed poorly, but the face and figure are very much nothing. Looking at her, any delinquent with living goods will say, This is what you need. Well, what about Danilka to the authorities? No one will look for them. No one. And yet, Natalia agreed. The girl looked at Ilya carefully and suddenly realized that he would not harm her or her son. So what? You still think I'm a blue-haired man? No, I don't think so. The girl smiled at Natasha. I agree. We agree, right, Daniel? The baby nodded. Well, great. Ilya was happy. Get in the car while I go to the supermarket to get some groceries. And there's a ball of cat at home. I'm an old man. When Natasha and the child went to the car, Ponomarev noticed that the boy was limping on one leg. The girl, having intercepted his gaze, said, The bike fell off, and now he's limping. There's no money for the surgery yet. What about Danila's father? The man asked and immediately grabbed his hand. Although, of course, this is not my business. Natalia was embarrassed, but still explained that the child's father was not there. They only came today from a village that was not far from the city. You can't find work there day and night. so they decided to try their luck in the city. After all, there's a chance to find at least some work here. The surgeon, understanding, nodded. Everything is clear. The story, in general, is as old as the world. People go to the city for no reason, and not for a good life, as some think, and in the hope of catching at least the most thin option. Ilya went to the supermarket, remembering his life on the way. He has been used to loneliness since childhood, although it would seem to someone, and to him, a handsome man and a lover of a beautiful sex, this concept should be unknown. And yet it was pure truth. Ilya's parents, brilliant doctors, often went on a business trip to a conference of doctors, and just lost their jobs until late. Then Vladimir Petrovich's medical career and Olga Nikolaevna's just started, and they worked to the core. While Ilya was little, his parents left him with his grandmother, Vladimir Ivanovich's mother, who did not work too hard to communicate with her grandson. She fed Ilya to the death, watched over the boy to look nice, escorted him to the kindergarten, and then to school. But Susakanya is not about Galina Sergeyevna. Go with God, said the old woman, awkwardly rubbing her grandson like a puppy. And Ilyusha left humbly. At first he was offended, and then decided, give her. In fact, grandmother brought Ilya to the orphanage. When the boy moved to the 5th grade, he began to stay at home alone. Being an independent guy, Ilya could not only warm up the lunch, but also cook it. When the parents were absent, the guy kept the cleanliness and order in the apartment and did not neglect school. No complaints from neighbors about loud music and a collection of youth parents did not hear. And it's not surprising there was nothing like that. What if Ilyusha from time to time invited some beautiful girl, and no one knew about it? It so happened that by the age of, he turned into a lonely root of Holostek. No, of course, there were sometimes light intrigues with the representatives of the female sex. After all, Ilya is an attractive man and definitely not a monk. However, his novels were short-term, and as a rule, they did not owe anything. Anyway, Ilya thought so. Two people like each other and meet from time to time. Many call it for health, and Ilya, as a doctor, was completely agree with this definition. Anyway, there was no serious long-term relationship. Ilya was a wealthy man who achieved everything himself. But with a small improvement, the parents still gave him a way to life. And what about that? Any normal parent will help their child, especially if you take into account that the medical problems of the guy were found at the age of. And when he grew older and began to go on trips and participate in rafting, he often provided first aid when fractures, injuries, frostbite, not to mention the artificial breathing and heart massage. Ilya studied well at the institute, and his parents had nothing to do with it. And then he had a red diploma, an internship, an ordination, work in a district hospital, and then in a private clinic. And now Ilya Ponomarev had a big, beautiful house, an expensive car, and everything he needed for a comfortable life. Comfort was one of the important components for him. He easily endured the deprivation on trips, extreme conditions, and never got bored. But after all, the cozy bathroom and other goods of civilization in a cozy house were much more liked by Ilya. After the adventure, he always wanted to return to his canoe. Despite the almost unlimited choice of entertainment, the main passion of Ilya was fishing. When he went to rest at the sea, he definitely found out. Are there any places where you can fish from the heart? Fish of the wild species that can be caught at a fashionable resort is, of course, good. However, fishing on the lake in some deaf, remote village where no one knew or bothered Ilya attracted him much more. For a successful surgeon, such a vacation was an exciting adventure and a source of unforgettable emotions, which he was deprived of in the metropolis. Ilya Rybalka especially remembered in the outskirts 7 years ago. He didn't want to go far then, and the young man stopped at the lake, which was located at the entrance to the nearby village. According to his friends, it was possible to catch a halibut there, which he very much respected. Ilya was fishing on a boat, but it unexpectedly gave out a runaway. There was a brainless autumn in the yard, and the prospects of the unpleasant were to be in the icy water. Here you are, he went to nail him. And suddenly his legs were shaking, and he was scared, he thought. Having sailed half to the shore, the wet and cold Ilya decided to go to a small village. The world is not without kind people. Maybe someone will let you warm up. Ilya knocked on the first house he came into. A year-old, white-skinned, and very beautiful girl opened the door for him. Huge turquoise eyes looked seriously and not without curiosity. "You wanted something?" she asked in a quiet, melodic voice. "Yes, I would like to warm up," said Ilya, trembling so that the tooth did not hit the tooth. "Just to warm up, you won't think anything bad." "Well, come on," the girl answered without thinking for a long time. "I'll give you some tea, and you'll warm up right away. And your family will not be against it. My father will come soon. He will probably get drunk again. And my sister went to my aunt. We don't have a mother." The boy was a little surprised that the girl tells such unspecified details to an unfamiliar person. But then he thought that she was probably sick. Ilya drank burning aromatic tea, looking at the hostess from time to time, who was called Valia. Her natural beauty, of course, caught the eye, but first of all, Valentina was not like any of the girls he knew. All the beauties that Ilya had a relationship with were cut off, and she grew with every second. What was left for him to do? Well, of course, to use all his charm to charm Valentina. However, it was not difficult. Ilya always had a wonderful sense of humor that helped him achieve the position of a lady. By the way, Valentina also looked at Ilya with interest. And it was not a simple curiosity that arises when seeing an unfamiliar person. When Ilya made an attempt to kiss the beauty, his surprise did not go away. As a result, the young people spent the night together. "You probably decided that I am a woman of light behavior, ready to lie in bed with every opposite," asked Valia, sitting on his shoulder. "No, what are you?" Ilya whispered, and he really didn't think so. It was unlikely that this could be called a passing intrigue or a minute's weakness. They were very good together, and everything else, it doesn't matter. But what difference will it make if the two pull each other with terrible force? And at dawn came the eye. He, as Valia predicted, was under the sofa. Ilya had to leave him with great regret. The man lived in the city, Valia in the suburb, but only the distance is a hindrance to love. When Valia was watching him, the lovers agreed to call back and re-sign. Fortunately, the age of social networks has already come, and of course they will definitely meet. It would be just a crime not to repeat such a night. At first there were calls and long conversations about everything in the world, and first of all, of course, about their love. But a month passed, and Ilya realized that his feelings had cooled down. This surprised the young man himself, but the fact remained a fact. Ilya and Valia met less often, and on one beautiful day, he just didn't answer the call. No, Ilya did not intentionally ignore him. Just at that moment, he was with a girl. Valia rather felt it than realized that everything was over between them. The girl cried a lot and was depressed. After all, he decided that I was an accessible girl. She sighed and thought, but Valia will not impose. She will just forget Ilya and will live as before. After all, she lived before without this amateur Rybolov. But it was impossible to forget. Much later, Ilya realized that the feelings of the quail most likely did not withstand the tests of distance. And it is not wise when there are so many beauties nearby, but at that moment it seemed that everything would be different. However, it cannot be said that Ilya was so worried about this. He is used to free life, that's the whole story. Or maybe the fairy tales about love are not for him at all. Either way, Ilya Ponomarev, and to this day, lived a free life and lived beautifully. So, in memory, Ilya filled the cart with various snow. As a result, he picked up 2 more ordinary products. By the way, he also bought a pack of milk and a set of chocolate biscuits for the boy. Having returned, Ilya with satisfaction noted that his young mother and Danilka are waiting for him in the car's spacious and warm cabin. "Well, let's go?" he asked with fun. Natalia nodded with a smile. And the boy said, "You have a cool car, I want to live in it. I hope you will like it more in the house." The surgeon laughed. Natalia and Daniel settled in Ilya Ponomarev's house. The young woman did her housework properly. The owner of the house worked a lot. And in her free time, she had fun and went on dates with the most beautiful women in the city. Natasha got a job and a roof over her head. Ilya. Perfect order in the house and hot food. The boy was not hungry. In his order, there were computers and interesting toys that the surgeon did not force him to buy. In short, Everyone was happy. Ilya and Natalia became good friends over time, and they talked a lot about different topics. But if Ilya told his new acquaintance something about his life, except for personal moments, then Natasha almost did not tell anything about her past, especially about what happened to the boy. The only thing that Ilya knew about the child was that he fell off a bicycle and hurt his leg. You should be busy with this issue. I thought, how are you a surgeon? But who is the father of the boy? Where did he come from? Natalia said nothing about this. However, this is clear. Mothers of loners do not like to talk about this at all. And in the end, she is not obliged to devote an unknown person to the secrets of her personal life. So a month passed. Ilya was resting after another operation when his mobile phone rang. Pashka Davidov, a classmate. Hello, Ilya. Hello, Pashka. What a fate. Yes, they decided to organize a meeting of classmates and asked me to contact you. Everyone invites their husbands and wives. By the way, how are you with this? Everything is as it should be. Suddenly, Ilya said to himself, Wife is beautiful. I didn't hear you got married. Pavel said with surprise. Yes, something like that. The classmates talked about different things, and when they said goodbye, Pavel scolded himself. But why did he lie? Ilya really wanted to go to the graduation party that will take place in 2 weeks. But besides, he wants to boast about a beautiful wife. Ilya has a prestigious job, a good house, an expensive car is also available. The matter is small. Find a spouse. He will not have time to get married in 2 weeks, of course, and he does not need to. And so you need to find a woman to play the role of a spouse. Actually, now nothing remains. Ilya overcame his good acquaintances in his mind and came to the conclusion that none of them would suit him. Then she can go to him. The successful surgeon perfectly realized that any of his girlfriends would stop with this idea and would start to gently lead Ilya to the fact that, say, it would be nice to turn her into life. But no. And then Ilya remembered his maid. What? Great option. Despite the modest clothes, Natasha is a very attractive girl. And if she is dressed, done her hair and makeup, it will be just a candy. Ilya will offer her money and, in general, on what side do not look the best candidate for the role of a wife is not found. Natalia, I need to talk to you, he said as soon as he entered the house. The girl was scared, and suddenly he decided to fire me. With fear, Natasha thought, where are we going with Danilka? Something is wrong. Ilya Vladimirovich, she asked. Let's go to my office. Natalia came in and sat down on the edge of the chair. Natalia, I have one very interesting proposal for you. She has a heart attack. She will not be fired. And what about Ilya Vladimirovich? In general, in 2 weeks, I have a meeting of graduates. Everyone will be spouses, and Ilya gave up and continued. In general, Natalia, I suggest you come with me. You will have to pretend to be my wife. Well, such a hateful lie. To say that Natalia was in shock meant nothing. She did not suspect that Ilya Vladimirovich might have complexes. Otherwise, how to explain that an adult self-sufficient, moreover, rich and successful person is ashamed of his status as a holistic? It would seem that he does not care about public opinion. Ilya, noticing the expression of the maid's face, added, Well, of course, for a separate fee. And Daniel? Natasha asked the first thing that came to her mind. Well, Daniel, I promise we won't be long. Sonny will play the game console, and I think he won't even notice our absence. Natasha sighed. In fact, the question about the son was no more than an excuse. After all, the boy is not 3 years old, and he can really be alone. In fact, Natasha was terribly uncomfortable. She didn't want to deceive people. And also, it's better to forget about it. Natasha, the maid was silent. She didn't know what to say. Natasha, I understand that I've upset you, but in fact, everything is not so bad. You will grow a little, get good money, and you will not see these people anymore anyway. Well, Natalia, do you agree? Okay, I agree. Ilya brought a maid's dress of bright blue color with a golden finish and a drop of rhinestone. In addition to the dress, there were also lacquered shoes on the studs. Wow! The man got angry when she tried on the dress and shoes. Even better than I imagined. Natalia, come to the mirror. The woman obeyed. Is it really me? She thought. However, everything was just beginning. On the day of the graduation, Ilya took the maid to the best salon in the city. Natalia visited hairdresser, makeup artist, and manicurist. Ilya waited for Natasha in the car. When she left the salon, the exuberant Lavilas, a true admirer of female beauty, froze with her mouth open. Natalia's hair was laid in a high, well-made hairstyle, and the makeup in delicate tones emphasized the freshness of her skin. On the way to his native school, Ilya thought that his maid's clothes were just as good. Yes, she is a real beauty. On the first day of meeting, Ilya compared Natasha with a diamond, without a border, and was close to the truth. Take off your rag and dress in branded clothes, and the difference is immediately visible in all the beauty, thought the man. And someone else will say that not clothes paint a person. Ilya's classmates looked at Natasha with admiration and said how young and beautiful his wife was. Their spouses, in turn, were not kind enough to touch her. Natasha wanted to fall through the ground, but when she relaxed a little, she realized that she was even pleased. The modest maid never heard so many compliments in her address, and so that the wives were angry. Could Natalia only dream about this? When Ilya invited her to dance, even the angry ladies were amazed by this unrealistically beautiful couple. Now she didn't want to go anywhere. But when Natasha will still have to spend the evening in a good restaurant in the company of an interesting man, from whom all women are crazy at a radius of kilometers, and also get money for it. Ilya was also excited. It turned out to be a cool show. After a while, the students were walking around the school, accompanied by the class leader Maria Stepanovna. An elderly woman told her former nurse how the school has changed over the years. And suddenly, passing by one of the offices, Natalia saw a photo of a girl in a black frame on the stand and was stunned. Next to the picture of a beautiful blonde, there were other photos in the mourning frames, and began to list the names and surnames of the students of the school who were no longer alive. Ilya looked at his wife and, noticing that she was crying, asked Natasha, "Everything is fine. Maybe we should step aside?" She just nodded. "So, what are these tears?" Ilya asked when they sat on the chairs standing in the corridor near the memorial. "It's just that Valentina Ushakova, my older sister, she also studied at this school. But not for long, 2 or 3 years. After our mother died of cancer, my father and I moved to the village. My father drank a lot, the apartment was sold for debts. Oh my God, I don't even want to remember that time. It's so terrible." Natalia nodded and continued. "Valia got pregnant in the village. Her boyfriend dumped her before she found out about it. Valia died during the birth. She started to bleed heavily. 6 years have already passed, even a little more. And for me, it was like yesterday. Now I'm watching Danilka. This is her son. And here we ran away from the same thing. He got completely drunk and even melts his hands." "Valia?" Ilya thought. "Valia?" When the spouses returned to the banquet hall, he came to the memory board and carefully looked at Natalia's sister. Ilya suddenly thought that in a second he would faint. It was the same girl he spent a hot night fishing with. They returned silently. Everyone was immersed in their thoughts. Natasha remembered her sister. One picture was changed to another. Here they are with Valusha and still small, swimming in the summer house. And here they go to school. Natasha in the 1st grade, Valia already in the 3rd. The girls have huge hydrangeas on thick stems. The sisters tell each other about their first love experiences. And then Natasha found out that her favorite sister is no longer around. But there is a baby who needs her care. The world collapsed. Ilya guessed that the probability that Valia could get pregnant from him is quite high. In any case, everything came together over time. So what does it mean? Danilka and his son? So maybe then, near the supermarket, it was a blood call? Ilya did not object to such a glorious son as Danilka. But how to look into the eyes of the maid? Ilya terribly did not want to admit to Natasha that he is that long-loved sister of hers. After all, in the eyes of the girl, he is a scoundrel, and a scoundrel who left her sister without a reason in an awkward situation. And yet he decided. Natasha said to Ilya, when they were already halfway home, "I need to tell you something. Perhaps you hate me, but I will not be silent." Natalia wanted to say something, but Ilya did not let her do it. Otherwise, all his determination would go to nothing. The man carefully picked up the words and was busy with every word. and yet he told her the whole truth. From beginning to end, Natasha listened without interrupting, and at the end of the story, she still could not hold back her tears. Ilya spoke and spoke. He was afraid that Natasha would say something terrible, so he tried not to be silent. He desperately wanted to find at least some excuse for his shameful act. Although deep down, the man understood it is unlikely that he will find such an excuse. How could he spend the night with a girl and not understand that they studied in the same school? But after thinking a little, the man decided that there was nothing wrong with that. According to Natasha, Valya studied in this school for only 2 or 3 years, and in another class. In addition, Ilya thought that Valya was years old. He was years old then, so it didn't occur to Ilya that he could remember this girl. Natasha, we have already arrived. And she silently left the car. When the owner of the house and the maid's room, although what the hell is the maid's room, entered the house, Danilka was already asleep. They went around their rooms, but no one fell asleep. Natasha went out to the balcony and, looking down, noticed that the light was on in the kitchen. It seems that not one of them is having a good sleep today. Blaming the sudden burst, Natalia went down to the kitchen. Ilya was sitting at the table, over a bottle of cognac and a plate of cheese, lemon, and olives. Drink, he asked. Natasha didn't complain too much about strong drinks, but today she will make an exception. There are too many strong emotions that would not be able to calm down. Natasha, you didn't say a word to me. Ilya spoke quietly. Are you judging me? Oh, Ilya Vladimirovich, who am I to judge? Natalia asked with a sigh. I see. What do you see? Perhaps she is on her shoulders. I myself do not know what I feel now, but I can say one thing for sure. I do not condemn anyone. You were young, and then I do not know all the stories. You will not command the heart. And even if you remained a scum, this is not a guarantee that she would be alive. Well, how to say, Ilya replied, my parents are doctors, and they could find a good gynecologist for Valya. Most likely, she had problems, and I honestly did not know that Valya was pregnant. But you see, Natalia smiled. Valya did not tell you about pregnancy. No, I'm not blaming her, but you too. It just happened. Thank you. The host smiled in response. For me, this is really very important. They talked for another hour. To be honest, Ilya didn't expect that he would be forgiven so quickly, and he was so heartbroken. And then he sat next to Natalia and hugged the girl. Natasha, Ilya said quietly, and suddenly began to kiss her. They didn't understand how Ilya ended up in Ilya's bedroom. Or maybe some force transferred them there, the one that was leading them to the supermarket. But she immediately threw these thoughts out of her head. When Natalia woke up, Ilya was still sleeping. He smiled in his sleep, but Natasha was in complete confusion. Oh my God, what have I done? The girl thought in horror. He must have decided that I am a woman of light behavior, ready to get into bed with everyone who caresses me. Natalia could not know that her sister once said to Ilya almost the same words. And the whole damn cognac. I have to get out of here, she thought. How can I work for this man now? When Ilya woke up, he felt like a newborn. He smiled, found a place next to him on the bed, and, without finding Natasha, jumped up. Natalia, he called out with fun. Natasha. The answers did not follow. Ilya assumed that the girl had gone to her room. He carefully knocked on the door and heard the answer come in. Natasha, what are you doing? I asked Ilya, confused. I'm packing my things. But why? Because we shouldn't have been. In general, you understood me. Oh, Natasha, Ilya called out, letting his hands into his thick, dark hair. Should we? Now it doesn't matter. Everything has already happened. So, what do we say now? I should have thought about it before. You wanted to say that you don't need to be easy-minded. Natasha, Ilya said. I assure you, I didn't want to say anything like that and didn't even think about it. But what kind of habit do you have to complicate and dramatize everything? But you men are all simple, Natalie parried. He came, saw one. Ilya understood. It's useless to argue with Natasha, and even more so to prove something to her. If it wasn't for this graduation party with the subsequent break of the cognac, this empty talk wouldn't be in his view. But what about Danilka? The baby needs surgery, and he, the surgeon Ilya Ponomarev, is simply obliged to help him. Actually, Ilya would have helped anyway, but now he is obliged to do it twice. He came, saw one. Ilya was confused. But if that's the case, the question arises. God with him. And the boys, you thought, where are you going with him now? Natasha was confused and blinked. They didn't think, he stated, but I plan to do the surgery tomorrow. So, Natasha, leave your nonsense. We'll just forget about what happened and continue our cooperation. Will this kind of arrangement suit you? Natasha nodded. Well, that's what they said. Ilya left the room, and Natalia sat down on the bed and thought. In fact, the way Ilya expressed himself was not at all to her liking. How unsightly. But unlikely Natasha will be able to forget the strong, but at the same time tender hands of Ilya. And these lips. Now she understood those women who slept and saw how to get jealous of the single-parent ownership. Where else can she go against beautiful, stylish, and refined women who have been in the arms of a successful surgeon? It's funny to think about it. The situation is not fun at all. Ilya will continue to have fun with his beauties, and Natasha will only remember the beautiful night that will never happen again. However, he is right. Natasha should think not only about herself, but also about her nephews. In the end, Danilka is not to blame for his aunt being so thoughtless. And if Ilya really helps them with the surgery, well, Natalia will be very grateful to him, and then she will think about new housing and work. The surgery costs a lot of money, said the head of the children's department. A lot of money? I don't care, waved Ilya's hand. I don't regret anything. Ilya has already done a DNA test. Now he knows for sure that Daniel is his own son. May I ask why you are so eager to help this child? No, Ilya cut off. Does it matter? No, I think Viktor Matveevich is right. Your money. Tomorrow you can bring the boy. We will put him on a test, and then we will decide on the date of the operation. Thank you very much, Natalia. With a smile, Ilya said, barely stepping over the threshold of the house. I have just amazing news. Danilka will have surgery. This is really great news. She was delighted. Thank you very much, Ilya Vladimirovich. Ilya Vladimirovich. He whistled about himself, going up to his office. It's crazy to go. Spend the night with a girl. And she, instead of using it, continues to magnify me as Ilya Vladimirovich. Old Lady Panamarev. Ilya approached the mirror, and, not noticing any signs of old age, still showed his reflection to the language. He turned on his laptop and tried to work, but the work did not stick. In front of his eyes stood the beautiful, gentle body of Natasha, her uncertain lips, resembling ripe cherries, and satin skin. From such memories, perhaps, it will not take long to whistle. And Ilya decided to ask his old friend, the classmate of Sasha Romanov. Alexander, like Ilya, was a handsome and hearty man. Oh, how many girls they broke their hearts, and sons of intelligentsia. Only Sasha's parents were teachers. His friend's father, Mikhail Borisovich, taught at the medical institute where his friend studied, and his mother, Svetlana Ivanovna, taught geography at school. Unlike Ilya's, Sonya tied himself to the knot of marriage and seems happy. It must be said that when he first saw Lisa, then his future wife friend, he was a little disappointed. Lisa was not an honest fool, but she was some kind of colorless or something. The only decoration of Lisa's appearance was a golden and smooth hair tie to the waist. But unfortunately, the girl braided her hair, so not everyone could appreciate the beauty of her hair. Everything else was completely unimpressive. Light eyelashes and eyebrows, thin lips, nothing remarkable, a skinny figure. And he did not impress with the style of clothes. And this is the girl of the handsome Sasha Romanov, who has a lot of beautiful eyes. When Ilya got to know Lisa a little closer, he thought that it was impossible to find a better bride than Sasha. When he looked at this couple, he understood this is exactly how the whole unit looks. Over time, Liza learned to do beautiful makeup, and instead of a braid, she wore a stylish haircut with long hair. But the birth of Elena, who had been Ilya Kresnitsa, made the figure of Elizaveta appetizing. Love, happy marriage, and motherhood truly transformed this amazing woman. Ilya sincerely admired his friend, because he was able to see the future beauty in an inconspicuous girl. First of all, I saw the beauty of the soul. Sasha loved to talk, the rest was fine. This year, Ilyanka turned years old. Ilya thought it would be nice to introduce the nun to his son. Ilya knew that his friends would always accept, listen, and give good advice. That's why he went to visit Romanov. The events of the last 2 days required thoughtful analysis, with whom Ilya alone will not cope. When the man opened his story to his friends, Sonia said, "I always knew that some kind of past painting was pulling behind you." "What are you talking about?" Ilya smiled with no fun. "I didn't know anything myself. You're my prophet." Sasha is right. Lisa gave a voice. "There has always been something mysterious in you. This is a carry-all of a romantic hero with a past in which there is a lot of interesting." "Well, now you are fantasizing," he called out, and Elizabeth, laughing, replied, "After all, in the end, everything turned out to be so." "That's right, too." Ilya smiled and nodded. "But what should I do with this now? What do you say, Ellis? It's easier for you to understand Natasha, well, like a woman. And I'll say this, when you go home, go to the round-the-clock flower kiosk, buy the most beautiful bouquet of flowers, and confess to Natasha in love. And whatever happens, we women love decisive men. And on Friday, come to us together. I'll cover such a table. Will you come? I think I've already pumped up." Ilya really loved strip loin. Every time, this golden-haired, which surprised the new culinary masterpiece. Ilya tried to eat moderately, but he could never resist the Romanos' guests. The doctor felt like a fat, lazy cat. Don't forget about flowers and love. His friends were. When Ilya came home with a luxurious basket of some strange flowers, which he immediately gave her. "Why?" Natalia asked and immediately scolded herself. "What an idiot. Normal women are just happy with flowers, and I ask why. You can't think of anything stupid." And just like that, Ilya smiled, remembering the old cartoon. "Thank you, very beautiful flowers. Natasha, I love you," I said to him, with a feeling, "and I want to be with you. You can say nothing. If you are not ready to answer me in return, I will wait and wait as long as it takes." Well, now he said everything. As Elisa said, whatever happens, but something told him that there should be happiness, a lot of happiness. His premonition did not deceive him. Natasha smiled and said. The next day, the lovers gathered Danilka for an examination. "They will check you, and then they will correct your leg," Natasha explained. "Does it hurt?" the baby asked with fear. "No, you will be given an injection, and you will not feel anything." Ilya calmed down. "And then you will wake up, and your leg will be like new." "Great. Will you come to me?" "Of course, dear," Natasha replied. "We will often visit you, especially since Ilya works there." Natalia left the clinic and, looking for the window of the room where Daniel was lying, came up to wave his hand. She headed towards the bus stop, but changed her mind. She wanted to walk. The city, which at the first minute of her stay seemed alien and hostile to her, now seemed friendly, elegant, and festive. The soul of a young woman sang. It seems that a bright line is coming in her life. Daniel can now walk normally, but Natasha was afraid to wait for the time when her son, yes, exactly her son, will go to school. If Ilya had not appeared in their lives, Danila would have had to endure the ridicule of her classmates. Alas, in this regard, the children are too cruel. If Ilya had not appeared, Natalia would not have recognized true love. Of course, she had relationships. She was years old, but nothing like what she had to experience with Ilya was not even in her bravest dreams, not to mention reality. Natasha walked down the street and smiled, and when she met the hairdresser on the way, she, blaming a sudden impulse, went there. The smile did not come off the face of Natasha. "Hello," her administrator greeted you. "What interests you?" "I would—" Natalia fell asleep. Only now she realized that she had been to the hairdresser's only twice, and the second time before the graduates' meeting. Decided. Now she will visit the beauty salon more than once a month. "Can't you pick up something with the hairdresser?" Natasha came out of the position. "Yes, of course." The administrator smiled blindingly with her brightly colored lips. "Now the master will be released. Maybe you'll be interested in something." With joint efforts, Natalia picked up an elongated bark with a beak to her eyebrows. And a completely different woman looked at her from the mirror. Now it was not the tortured problems of the lonely mother of the child of the disabled, but the spectacular young lady who knew her worth. After her hair was cut in wheat color, they looked more well-groomed and attractive. Natalia got younger by 5 years. "You must have fallen in love," the master asked slyly. In the year, Natasha admitted. "Why is it so noticeable? You shine straight. My advice to you, whoever your man is, do not let him go." "I will not let him go," with a happy smile, she assured. Leaving the beauty salon, Natalia warmly said goodbye to the administrator and stepped further. "Girl, you accidentally got the address wrong." And Griva asked Ilya when he entered the house. "Well, if you insist so, then I can leave," Natasha answered him in tone. She had a cute silk-colored dress on her. The new haircut was on the waist to the face. Light makeup beautifully shaded clean matte skin, and now Ilya was openly admiring her. "What a beauty she is," he thought with admiration. The most important thing in the world is whether I would like to feel in the bedroom with Natasha, but for tonight there were other plans that she had not yet known about. "You changed your hairstyle?" "Well, great, very much even by the way, because today we're going to very good people. Do you want to meet me with your friends?" Surprisingly, Natasha asked. On her face, it was clear that this was a pleasant surprise. "Well, why not? And I would like everyone to know about it. Now everything will end with Danilka, and I will introduce you to my parents, and they are my world." What to say? Relationships developed rapidly. This made Natasha happy and scared. Sometimes it seemed to her that with her relationship with Ilya, she gives memory to her sister. But if you look at it from the other side, Natasha gave Daniel to her father, and a real one. And most importantly, she deserved this happiness. When Ilya mentioned meeting with his parents, Natalia was in a real panic. What if she doesn't like her father or mother? Ilya? Apparently, they are respectable people. They must be dreaming about such a bride for their son. "Natasha, honestly, all your thoughts are reflected on your face." Suddenly, Ilya laughed. "Let me guess. Now you are thinking that you may not like my parents." Judging by the confused expression of his face, he realized that he had hit the spot, and frankly speaking, barely held back his laughter. "Everything will be fine, I assure you. I already told them about you." "What exactly?" "That's it, Natasha," Ilya answered seriously. "I told them everything, and now let's get together. And I also told my friends about you yesterday, and now they are eager to see you." Romanova was delighted with Ilya's choice. "I understand that woman," and Sasha politely said when the ladies went to the kitchen. "I don't recommend letting them out." "You think I don't understand that myself?" Panomarev swam away in a happy smile. "The same." And there was a woman's talk in the kitchen. "You know, Natasha, you are the only woman, Ilya, with whom I would like to communicate constantly," Lisa admitted. Natasha was shocked. Her beloved's wife was so elegant and interesting, and she was a poor single mother from a village. Is she and Natasha more interesting than the ladies of the same circle? God forbid. Elisaveta waved her hand when the guest voiced her thoughts. What kind of circle is there? Refined boobies dreaming of harming a promising groom? That's what I call them. Because how much you can't hide your essence in branded rags, and you're cool. I really want you to become my friend. Natalia also did not object to this, like Liza, which she told her. But the owner of the house concluded wonderfully. "And now let's go to our men, otherwise they have probably already eaten." The evening passed in a warm, unobtrusive atmosphere. Natasha really liked Romanov's wife, and she would not mind inviting them to her. Of course, Natasha is far from Lisa in terms of culinary skills, but she can do something. Ilya and Natasha had a great time. They walked in the park, fed the ducks, ate the most delicious ice cream that was sold in the kiosk at the entrance. The lovers went fishing at a private reservoir, rested at a turbicide, went to restaurants. Love is great, but Danilka's health is above all. The next day, Alia and Natalia visited the boy. They bought him delicacies and sweets. The baby, although he was happy with delicious things, missed Uncle Ilya's house. In general, Daniel was a good boy. The thought that he would stop limping and start running again quickly warmed his child's heart. Congratulations! The operation was successful, the child surgeon said with a smile. Thank you very much, Natasha called out, and tears were pouring out of her eyes. "Well, why are you crying, fool?" Ilya laughed. "After all, everything is already behind. Of course, there is still a period of rehabilitation ahead, but we did the main thing. We did it, Natasha." "Stupid. This is from happiness." After the discharge, Ilya personally gave the son a massage. And when he was at work, Natalia took him to the rooms and took him out on the street. But Moscow did not immediately settle. Together they will overcome everything. In a month, Daniel could walk without support. We did it. They scammed in 3 voices when the boy was over meters. And then Ilya went to the store and bought a bottle of Igrostov, not forgetting about the baby cocktail, which Danilka loved so much. For the first serious achievement, Ilya made a toast for dinner. The cemetery of the dacha village was quiet, and only the cry of the crows rarely disturbed the silence of the kingdom of those who completed their earthly journey. Ilya, Natalia, and Daniel stood next to the grave, on which the stone-breaking flower bloomed. This, despite the name, is an amazingly cute and tender flower. From a small oval photo, a cute face of a young woman was looking at them. "Well, hello, Valusha," Natalia quietly said and crossed her arms. "You see, sister, how life has turned. I hope you are not offended by me." Ilya thought, Valya, why didn't you tell me anything? I was proud. Danila could not remember his own mother. That is, he knew that Natasha had a sister, but for him, there was only one mother, the one who sacrificed for him for all, her personal life. The opportunity to get education and become a self-sufficient person. So maybe it's time to tell the boy the truth now, in front of the grave of the woman who gave him life. "Is this my aunt?" Daniel quietly asked, and thereby unwillingly helped the adult to do this. "No, son," Natasha shook her head through tears. "This is your real mother. She gave birth to you, and then she died. And I took you to my place. I did the right thing, didn't I?" "Of course," the child said. "I was small, and I couldn't live alone. He's so smart and sensitive," she thought. She doesn't even ask questions about her father. She couldn't imagine how Danila would tell him that Ilya is his father. Natasha knew one thing for sure. Today, it is definitely not worth doing. That Valentine is his real mother. Thank God he received the information painlessly, but for today, perhaps that's enough. Having put a bouquet of tea roses on the grave, which Valia loved, they left. "You're good," Natalia said, already at home. She managed to softly and tactically explain to Daniel what was going on. "You know that this is not all," she sighed. "I know, but we can handle it. And a suitable moment will definitely be found." A week later, Ilya took Natalia and Danila to their parents. Olga Nikolaevna and Vladimir Petrovich lived in the Stalin's Trests in the city center. And Ilya's mother and father have already reached retirement age, but have still been practicing. Olga Nikolaevna worked as a doctor in a private nursing home, and her husband worked in a cardiotherapy center. Ilya really told his parents everything. Therefore, they did not wait for a woman whose son was taken with the child. Olga Nikolaevna and Vladimir Petrovich were waiting for their own grandson and a woman who had brought him up. The table broke from the treat. While Mom did her best, Ilya called out, pulling Olga Nikolaevna huge bouquets of Gulkite chrysanthemum. "Here, your favorite." "Well, you always knew how to please ladies." Mother giggled. "And now I please Mom only to your ladies. You and Natasha." "Oh no, Liza, but it's completely different. Why can't you imagine a bride?" Father asked with a smile. "Well, because of this charming young man." "It's my fault," said Paul Bu, after which he introduced the people present to each other. "But the ceremonies are over. Everyone is presented." "Maybe for the table?" said Vladimir Petrovich. "I really want to eat," and added to address Danila. "How do you look at this, young man?" "I'm only for it," said the boy, and everyone sat down at the table. The first half an hour was barely silent. Natasha looked at her son and was so jealous of him. It seems he felt easy and not forced. The call of blood is no different, but she herself was somewhat out of control. But after a while, from the concerns of Natasha about the fact that she may not like the parents of Ilya, there was no trace left. Vladimir Petrovich and Olga Nikolaevna talked to her in a kind tone, didn't ask unnecessary questions, and joked. Natalia relaxed, but the most interesting thing was ahead. 1 minute, attention, said Ilya. I have news for you. I hope it's pleasant. The mother smiled, looking at her son and Natasha. Don't even doubt it, he answered. And then Ilya came out of the table, came up to his beloved and, sitting in front of her, asked on one knee, Natasha, will you marry me? I promise to love all my life and become the best husband in the world. Yes, Natalia whispered. Of course, yes. You have to drink to that, Vladimir Petrovich said. They returned home by taxi. The future family sat in the back seat. Danila fell asleep. Natasha, putting her head on Ilya's shoulder, was also sleeping, thinking what a happy woman she was. When they came to the house, Ilya carefully took his son in his arms and carried him into the house. I really like your parents, she said. You smiled at them too, future husband. A month passed. Do you agree, Panamarev Ilya Vladimirovich, to take Natalia Viktorovna Boltova as your wife? Yes. Do you agree, Bolotov Natalia Viktorovna, to marry Ilya Vladimirovich Panamarev? Yes. I declare you husband and wife. The young exchanged rings and the first wedding kiss, and the present ones rushed to congratulate them. Good luck to you, my dear. Olga Nikolaevna felt it when she hugged the newlyweds. Ilya, you're a good boy, Vladimir Petrovich politely called out. Such beauty was enough. Love, happiness, and more children. You are so beautiful, Liza Romanova said with admiration. Congratulations. Alexander hugged his friend and kissed Natalia's hand. I congratulate you. They heard a lot of warm words, and when the young wives left the house, guests from the Soul sprinkled them with rice and rose petals. When I grow up, I will marry Elena. Daniel said in a limousine that he took them to one of the best restaurants in the city. Elena knows, Natasha said. Well, I haven't made an official application yet, the boys said, but I told Elena that I like her. Iron argument, Ilya summed it up. The honey month in Paris is a dream of any woman. And for a poor girl from a Dachshund village, this is something from the realm of fantasy. Danila stayed with his grandmother and grandfather. A few days before the marriage of Ilya and Natalia, another frank conversation took place. Mom, will Uncle Ilya be my dad now? Danila once asked in the evening when Natasha did the manicure, and Ilya studied the catalog of fishing accessories. Having heard the question of his son, he left this lesson. Danila, he said, I'm listening. The boy answered as he grew older. Ilya didn't know where to start. I won't be your father, he said with a sigh. I'm not your father anyway. When I knew your mother, who gave birth to you, it was a sad story. And when you grow up, we will definitely tell you about it. You had a novel with my mother, and then you left her? Danila asked strictly like in the movie. Well, you could say that. Ilya nodded. We broke up, and I didn't know anything about you. It sounded like an attempt to justify myself, and Ilya got angry at himself. But the baby was already hugging his father, saying, everything is fine, Dad. So now Daniel knew that he was staying with his relatives, grandmother and grandfather, whom he had fallen in love with on the first day of meeting. The newlyweds flew to Paris with a light heart. But I've never flown a plane before. Well, you'll definitely remember this annoying gap with me. Ilya smiled. And I hope more than once. To visit the capital of fashion and not buy a lot of beautiful things, yes, it happens. Panamareva's spouses sold out all the sales and gained so much that it seems that the whole city can be set up. However, Natalia and Ilya did not plan to set up the city, but their relatives with great pleasure. They picked up fashionable and beautiful clothes for their loved ones, Vladimir Petrovich, Olga Nikolaevna, Danilka, and didn't forget about the Romanov family. This is probably wildly expensive, Elizaveta called out. You won't believe it, Liza. It's much cheaper than here, Natasha replied with a smile. Yes, poor people dress better there than here, people with average wealth. You are something pale, noticed her friend. Oh, I feel so unimportant today. It's so annoying. Maybe it's because of the time difference? It happens. But something tells me that the time difference has nothing to do with it. Lisa smiled slyly. How are you doing with the ladies' affairs? You think that? On the way home, Natasha went to the pharmacy and bought a pregnancy test. He turned out to be positive. At first, Natalia wanted to surprise her husband. The future mother, excitedly walking around the house, and pretending to be surprised. But in the end, she couldn't hold back, and, not being wise, Lakeva called Ilya and told him that he would become a father for the second time. The husband was happy to the point of being rude. On September, they were taking Danila to the first grade together. Yuzia showed that Panamariva would have a girl. Danila suggested calling her sister Katia, and the future parents accepted the idea. Grandpa and Grandma, who had received a ready grandson, were now happy together. "Yes, we are going to wait for grandchildren with my father," Olga Nikolaevna exclaimed. And here we can say with interest, they were impatiently waiting for the birth of a granddaughter, after which they finally decided to retire. By the way, Romanova, inspired by the example of her friends, is now thinking about adding to the family. Ilyuka jumped on me, he laughed. "I thought I was an experienced dad, but he has a son or older than our Ilya. And now they are waiting for a second one. I envy the silence." Ilya laughed. "Daniel is in the first grade, and unlike many superiors, he does it with pleasure." The boy loved the physical education lessons. When the parents were offered to discuss with the children what circles and sections they wanted to visit, Daniel made a choice without hesitation in favor of the athletes. Well, the son turned out to be worthy of his father. Panamariva's spouses are preparing to become parents and consider the days that remain before this joyful event. If you like the story, please support me with a thumb up. And in order not to miss new stories, press the bell when subscribing. All the best to you.